Everything you believe about life and death is based on an illusion. You were born into a world that told you beginnings and endings are real, that you came into existence at birth and will one day vanish at death. But what if I told you that's just a construct, a veil over a much deeper truth? Reality is not what it seems. The body ages, time moves forward, and everything appears to have a start and a finish. But beneath this surface-level perception, existence is infinite. You are not merely a physical being navigating a temporary life. You are consciousness itself, beyond time, beyond space, beyond the illusion of separation. Think about a dream. While dreaming, it feels real. You see, feel, and experience as if it's your only reality. But when you wake up, you realize it was just a projection of your mind. What if waking life is no different? What if birth is simply entering one dream and death is merely waking up to another? The universe does not create and destroy, it transforms. The same applies to you. What you think of as your self is just a fleeting identity, a role in the vast cosmic play. But the true you, it was never born and can never die. Are you ready to wake up from the illusion and see life for what it truly is? Let's uncover the hidden truth of existence, beyond birth, beyond death, and beyond everything you've been conditioned to believe. Declare your readiness now. Type, "I am awakened" in the comments and step into your limitless potential. If this message resonates with you, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe. Let's reach 1,000 souls who are ready to break free and transform their reality. The false perception of beginnings and endings. The way we perceive life is deeply shaped by the belief that it moves in a straight line, with a clear beginning at birth and an inevitable end at death. This idea is so ingrained in us that we rarely question it. But if we look closer, we begin to see that this linear view of existence is just a mental construct, not an absolute truth. Life does not truly begin at one fixed point and end at another. Instead, it is part of a continuous unfolding where what we call birth and death are merely shifts in form, not true boundaries of existence. The notion of a starting point is based on how we define things rather than on an inherent truth about reality. If we say a river begins at its source and ends at the ocean, we are only describing a transition, not an absolute start or finish. The water itself is never created or destroyed. It simply moves through different states. In the same way, what we think of as coming into existence and ceasing to exist are just arbitrary distinctions placed on a larger, uninterrupted flow. The way we define identity also reinforces this illusion of fixed beginnings and endings. We see ourselves as a single, unchanging self moving through time, but in reality, identity is fluid. From childhood to adulthood, our thoughts, desires, and even our sense of self shift dramatically. The person you were 10 years ago is not the same as who you are now. Yet there is an assumption that a single, continuous you remains throughout. But this is only a convenience of language and memory, not an absolute fact. If identity were truly fixed, we would never change in any meaningful way. Instead, what we experience is a stream of awareness in which the concept of I is continuously reshaped. Just as a wave cannot be separated from the ocean, the self cannot be pinned down to a single form. Birth does not create a permanent self, nor does death erase one. It is all part of a larger process that does not fit neatly into a linear framework. Birth and death, as we commonly understand them, are simply points of transition rather than absolute events. if we take away the labels we attach to them. They appear more like phases in an ongoing movement rather than definitive moments where something begins or ends. What we call birth is just the emergence of a particular form, and death is the dissolving of that form. But the process itself does not stop. It only continues in a different way. Just as day does not suddenly end when night begins, existence does not suddenly end at death. It only transforms. Seeing life as a straight path from beginning to end is a limited perspective, one that obscures the deeper reality that everything is part of a continuous, ever-unfolding existence. Consciousness exists. Beyond the body is often seen as the defining boundary of existence. But this assumption is based on perception rather than truth. Consciousness, the very essence of awareness, is not something produced by the body, but something that operates through it. The body is like a tool, a vessel through which consciousness expresses itself. Just as a musician is not the instrument they play, awareness is not the body it temporarily inhabits. When the body is damaged, consciousness remains untouched. People who lose limbs, experience severe trauma, or even undergo major neurological changes often report feeling like the same self they have always been. This suggests that awareness is not confined to the body's structure, but exists independently of it, only using it as a medium for interaction with the physical world. Near-death experiences provide compelling evidence that consciousness is not tied to the body. Many people who have been clinically dead, whose hearts have stopped beating, whose brains have ceased activity, report an unbroken sense of awareness. They describe seeing their bodies from an outside perspective, hearing conversations, and even moving through unfamiliar realms of existence. Some of these experiences include verifiable details, conversations or events that the person could not have known about while unconscious. If awareness were solely a function of the brain, it would cease the moment the body shut down. Yet these accounts suggest otherwise. This raises the question, if consciousness continues beyond bodily function, was it ever truly inside the body to begin with? Scientific exploration, particularly in quantum mechanics, further challenges the idea that consciousness is confined to the body. Studies show that the act of observation influences reality at a subatomic level. Particles exist in multiple states until they are observed, at which point they choose a definite state. This phenomenon suggests that awareness itself plays a role in shaping reality, not the other way around. If consciousness were merely a byproduct of the brain, it would not have the ability to affect the fundamental nature of reality. Instead, it appears that awareness is primary, and the material world follows. Some scientists and philosophers speculate that the universe itself may be conscious in some way, with individual awareness being localized expressions of a greater field of intelligence. Dreams and altered states of consciousness offer direct experiences of awareness existing beyond the physical form. In dreams, the mind creates entire worlds without any input from the senses. A person can experience a sight, sound, touch, and even emotions in a reality completely separate from the physical body. Lucid dreamers can even manipulate these experiences, proving that awareness does not need the body to function. Similarly, deep meditation, out-of-body experiences, and psychedelic states all point to an awareness that is not bound to the flesh. These states reveal that the mind can travel beyond the body, experiencing realities that exist outside of normal perception. If consciousness can exist independently in these states, it suggests that it is not something produced by the body, but something that temporarily operates through it. The illusion of individuality. From the moment we are born, we are taught to believe in the idea of a separate self. We are given a name, told who we are, and conditioned to see ourselves as distinct individuals. Society reinforces this by drawing lines between me and you, self and other. But this sense of individuality is not something we are born with. It is something we learn. A newborn baby does not see itself as separate from the world. It simply experiences existence without labels. The belief in individuality develops as the mind begins to categorize and define the world. However, just because we have been trained to think this way does not mean it reflects ultimate reality. Everything in existence is interconnected. Just as waves in the ocean may seem separate, but are all part of the same body of water, so too are all beings part of a greater whole. The air you breathe was once inside someone else. The food you eat comes from the earth, which is sustained by the sun, which itself is part of an even larger cosmic dance. Every action has a ripple effect, influencing things beyond what we can see. The idea that we exist as completely independent entities is an illusion created by perception. Physically, emotionally, and energetically, we are in constant exchange with everything around us. Even thoughts and emotions are not entirely our own. They are shaped by the world we live in, the people we interact with, and the experiences we absorb. Personal identity is not a fixed thing. It changes throughout life, proving that the self is not a single, unchanging entity. The person you were as a child is not the same person you are today. Your interests, beliefs, desires, and even personality traits have evolved. What you once thought defined you has likely shifted many times. If identity were truly fixed, none of this change would be possible. Yet we cling to the illusion of a solid self, even as it continuously transforms. If who you are is always shifting, then what is the real you? Is it the body, which also changes over time? Is it the mind, which holds different thoughts at different moments? The more closely you examine the self, the more it dissolves into something fluid, rather than something separate and unchanging. The sense of otherness is another illusion that comes from the idea of individuality. We look at people and assume they are separate from us. But this is only a matter of perception. Just as different branches grow from the same tree, all beings arise from the same source of existence. The differences we perceive, whether in appearance, personality, or beliefs, are surface-level expressions of something much deeper and more unified. The feeling of being apart from others is a mental habit, reinforced by language and culture. In truth, there are no real boundaries between beings, only the mind's tendency to divide what is actually one. Death as a transition, not an end death, is often seen as the ultimate ending, a final point where everything ceases. But in reality, nothing in existence truly ends. It only transforms. The physical body, like everything else in the universe, follows the principle of energy conservation. Science tells us that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It only changes form. The body decomposes and becomes part of the earth, its elements returning to nature. If the physical form undergoes transformation rather than destruction, why would the essence of awareness be any different? Just as the body shifts into a new state, so too does consciousness. Death is not the vanishing of existence, but a transition from one state of being to another. Many who have experienced clinical death and returned describe something unexpected, not fear, pain, or darkness, but a profound sense of peace. They report a feeling of expansion, as if they are no longer confined to a single point of awareness. Some describe observing their own lifeless bodies from a distance, detached yet fully present. Others recall entering a space of light, warmth, or vast openness. While these experiences vary, a common thread remains. Consciousness does not simply switch off. Those who have come back from death often describe it as an effortless shift, like moving from one room to another rather than an abrupt end. If awareness continues, even when the body has stopped functioning, then death is not what we have been taught to believe. It is not an erasure, but a passage. This understanding changes the way death is perceived. If death were truly the end, there would be nothing beyond it, no thoughts, no experience, no awareness. But if people who have clinically died and been revived can recall detailed experiences, then something remains. These moments challenge the idea that the brain alone produces consciousness. Instead, they suggest that consciousness exists independently and continues beyond physical existence. The reports of those who have returned from death often describe a sense of clarity, as if they are seeing reality more vividly than before. Some even express reluctance to return, not because they do not value life, but because they feel an overwhelming sense of completeness beyond the body. The fear of death arises largely from the belief that it is an absolute ending. But if death is simply a transition, then it is no different from the many transformations we undergo in life. Just as we shift from childhood to adulthood, from waking to sleeping, from one moment to the next, death is another change in the flow of existence. The form may dissolve, but awareness continues. It is not a disappearance, but a movement, like a river, that changes course but never stops flowing. Reality is a projection of the mind. Reality is not as solid and objective as it seems. What we call the real world is, in truth, a projection of the mind, filtered, constructed, and shaped by our awareness. The brain does not directly experience reality. It interprets signals. Our eyes do not see the world as it is. They receive light and convert it into electrical impulses, which the brain translates into images. Similarly, sounds, smells, and sensations are not inherent qualities of the world, but interpretations of sensory input. The mind takes fragments of information and forms a coherent picture, but this picture is not the totality of existence. It is merely a version of it, shaped by perception. What we experience is limited by the brain's filters. The human eye perceives only a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum, what we call visible light, while countless other wavelengths remain unseen. Other animals perceive different realities. Birds detect magnetic fields. Snakes sense infrared heat. And bees see ultraviolet patterns invisible to us. Their worlds are completely different, yet just as real to them as ours is to us. This proves that reality is not fixed. It shifts based on the way it is perceived. If our senses changed, our version of reality would change too. What we think of as absolute is merely the mind's best attempt to create order from an incomprehensibly vast existence. Belief plays a powerful role in shaping our experience of reality. The placebo effect demonstrates this clearly. People given a sugar pill often experience real healing simply because they believe they are receiving medicine. Their bodies respond to their belief, not to any external substance. This phenomenon extends beyond medicine. People who believe they are unlucky often encounter more misfortune, while those who expect success tend to see more opportunities. This is not just coincidence. Belief directs perception, influencing which details the mind notices and which it ignores. Reality bends to fit expectations, not because the external world changes, but because the mind selects information that aligns with what it already assumes to be true. Quantum physics takes this idea further, suggesting that reality itself is not independent of observation. Particles at the smallest scales exist in multiple states until they are measured, at which point they choose a definite form. This means that observation plays a role in shaping physical reality. The world we experience is not separate from our awareness of it. It is intertwined with it. What we perceive as solid, external, and unchanging is actually fluid, responsive, and influenced by consciousness. Reality is not something we simply witness. It is something we participate in. The world as we know it is not an external fixed structure, but a mental projection shaped by perception, belief, and awareness. What seems undeniable may only be the mind's rendering of something far more fluid and mysterious than we have been taught to believe. Time is an illusion, not a constant time. Appears to move in a straight line, but this is merely a perception, not an absolute truth. We experience life as a sequence of moments, one event following another in a predictable order. But this experience is shaped by the mind, not by any fundamental law of existence. In reality, time is flexible, shifting depending on perspective and state of consciousness. It is not an unbreakable flow from past to future, but a construct that can expand, contract, or even dissolve depending on how it is perceived. Different states of awareness reveal the fluid nature of time. In dreams, a person can experience what feels like hours or even days within the span of a few minutes. Similarly, deep meditation or intense focus can cause time to either speed up or slow down. A moment of joy can feel like it passes in an instant, while a moment of pain can stretch on endlessly. These experiences prove that time is not a fixed reality. It bends and shifts depending on the mind's state. If time were truly constant, it would always be experienced the same way, but instead it warps, revealing its illusory nature. Some theories suggest that the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, but we perceive them in sequence because of the way our consciousness is structured. Just as a movie reel contains an entire film at once, yet we experience it frame by frame. Reality may exist as a whole, with all moments present at once. However, the mind processes events in a linear fashion, creating the illusion of progression. This idea challenges the way we think about existence. If all moments are equally real, then the idea of a fixed past or an uncertain future is an illusion. What we call the present is simply the point of focus in an ever-existing field of time. Quantum mechanics supports the idea that time is not an unchanging flow. At the smallest levels of reality, particles do not behave in a predictable sequence. They exist in multiple states at once until observed. This suggests that time is not a rigid framework, but a flexible, fluid aspect of reality. Some experiments even suggest that the future can influence the past, an idea that defies traditional understanding. If time were truly linear, this would not be possible. But at the quantum level, past and future are not as separate as they appear. The idea that time is an illusion is not just a theoretical concept, it is something we experience daily. Our perception of time changes depending on our emotions, our focus, and our awareness. It is not a universal constant, but a shifting experience that depends entirely on the observer. What we take for granted as a steady, measurable force may be nothing more than a mental construct, a way for the mind to organize reality into something understandable. Your true self is beyond name and form. The identity that people associate with, their name, history, beliefs, and personality, is not their true self. These are layers built over time, shaped by memories, experiences, and external influences. If a person were to lose all their memories, their past would vanish, but their existence would not cease. This reveals an important truth. What you truly are is not defined by what you remember or believe about yourself. Thoughts come and go, identities shift, and circumstances change. Yet something remains constant, an awareness that observes it all. That awareness is the real self, untouched by the temporary nature of the mind. Deep states of meditation or moments of profound stillness reveal an experience beyond thoughts. When the constant inner dialogue fades away, there is still something present. It is not an idea or a concept. It is direct, undeniable awareness. This awareness does not depend on labels, emotions, or past experiences. It simply is. Unlike the mind, which always seeks to define and categorize, this awareness has no boundaries, no story, and no personal history. It does not belong to any particular individual. Rather, it is the foundation of all existence. The moment one stops identifying with the surface layers of personality, the deeper reality of this awareness becomes clear. The body, too, is not the true self. It constantly changes from infancy to old age. Yet throughout all these transformations, the sense of I remains. If the body were the essence of identity, then a person would become someone entirely new each time their physical form changed. But this is not the case. Even though the body shifts, something continuous observes these changes. That which observes cannot itself be part of what is observed. The true self is not the body, but the unchanging awareness that perceives it. Ego, the sense of being a separate individual, is also not the true self. The ego is a collection of mental constructs, roles, expectations, and ideas about who one is. It is built over time through conditioning and social influences. But just as a person can take on a new role in life and then leave it behind, so too can the ego be recognized as a temporary structure, not an ultimate reality. When the need to hold onto a specific identity dissolves, what remains is something far deeper than personality, a presence that exists beyond the shifting nature of thought and form. This presence is not something that needs to be attained. It is already there. It is not hidden, but it is often overlooked because attention is caught up in thoughts and external identities. The mind constantly moves between past and future, constructing narratives, but the true self is found only in the immediate experience of awareness itself. It does not need to be defined, improved, or strengthened. It simply is. Recognizing this does not add anything new. It only removes the illusion that identity was ever tied to name, form, or thought in the first place. Awakening to the infinite nature of existence. The realization of infinite existence is not about gaining something new. It is about seeing through the illusion of limitation. From the moment we are born, we are taught to believe in boundaries. Between people, between life and death, between the physical and the unseen. But these boundaries exist only in the mind. The moment one begins to question these assumptions, the cracks in the illusion begin to appear. The world has conditioned people to see themselves as separate entities, moving through time with a defined beginning and end. But this is not the truth of existence. What we call life and death are simply changes in form, not the creation or disappearance of anything real. Awakening is not a process of becoming something new, nor is it an achievement to be earned. It is the recognition that there was never anything to seek in the first place. The idea that one must find truth implies that truth was ever lost, but it was never gone. It has always been present, hidden beneath layers of conditioning and mistaken identity. The mind, caught in its patterns of division, searches for meaning in the external world. But the reality of infinite existence cannot be grasped by thought alone. It is not a concept to be understood, but a direct experience of being, beyond names, beyond time, beyond any idea of self or other. Everything that appears to be lost is only transformed. The nature of existence is constant change, yet nothing is ever truly destroyed. A wave may rise and fall, but it was never separate from the ocean. It was only a temporary form, appearing for a moment before merging back into the vastness from which it came. The same is true for everything in life. People, experiences, and even the universe itself. The sense of loss is real within the illusion, but beyond it, there is only endless transformation. Once this is seen clearly, fear dissolves. There is nothing to hold on to because nothing was ever truly apart. The greatest illusion is the belief in separation. It creates the idea of lack, the fear of endings, and the search for meaning outside oneself. But when the illusion falls away, it becomes clear that there was never anything missing. The wholeness of existence was never broken, never divided. What one seeks is not found in another place, another time, or another state of being. It is here, now, and it always has been. The moment this is seen, not as a theory, but as an undeniable truth, everything changes. Not because something was added, but because the false sense of limitation was removed. Awakening is not about becoming infinite. It is about realizing you always were. Conclusion. Everything you thought was fixed, time, self, reality, was only an illusion created by the mind. Birth and death were never true, beginnings or endings, just transitions within an endless flow. Consciousness was never trapped in the body. It only appeared that way. The idea of individuality was a learned perception, not an absolute truth. Reality itself was not something external, but a projection shaped by awareness. Time was never linear. It was only experienced that way. Your true self was beyond identity, beyond form, beyond thought. And in the end, awakening was not about becoming something greater. It was about realizing you were never separate to begin with. If this resonated with you, it's because deep down you already knew. If you like this, you align with the truth. If you share it, you help awaken others. And if you subscribe, you continue the journey of unraveling the greatest illusion of all, separation itself.